Alrighty, welcome to I don't know. I have some thoughts on Dredgen Bale, his purpose, um, his true goal. So I've played the campaign 2 times, and there's some interesting things that I have maybe not recognized, but like noticed. And then I've also read the lore books a couple times, trying to just decipher like. Also, I don't know if this is bugged, but all my lore book entries after 6 just repeat entry 2. Um, so I don't know what that is. But I guess this video, and I'm going to try not to ramble too much, is all about identifying Bale's goals and motivations and stuff like that. And then possibly maybe hinting at a red subclass in the future. So to start, we start with this entry number 7, and it starts as division is the universe's force for creation. Reality is ripe with possibility when things spiral and crash into each other. When the outcome becomes unpredictable, something happens. Possibility emerges. I can grab onto possibility. Widened the gyre. What is that? What does that mean? Spiral or vortex. Widen the vortex. Okay, let's assume it means vortex. I'm assuming I spelled that right? Gyre. That deafens the falcon and spins the center apart, as they say. Deafens the falcon. Maybe that wasn't a hawk, but a falcon. The bird that comes to us and spins the center apart. That's an interesting line. I don't know exactly how that applies to anything at the moment. Okay, so coalition's not grown from the inside out, but made instead by bringing outsiders together. Have cracks through them. Foundational Kinzuki, I think is how you say it. Kinzuki. I don't know how to say it, but it's these pot things, and it's interesting because in this sentence he's Bale's. I think it's Bale anyway. Is comparing Guardians to broken pieces grafted together by gold, and the gold being the light that holds them together, which is pretty interesting. A union made from gold is nice to look at, but nothing is stronger than the original shell, the single piece. So this is like the shell. Where is it? Here it is. Yeah, single shell, a structural system in which loads are supported by an object's external skin. So basically what Bale's saying is that it's the external skin of the Guardian that keeps them together, and that beneath that they are nothing. They're hollow, I think. And then he compares this to Loom's Imperium. And then this part's interesting because he says, for all the great gifts that of flat time that 6 has given us, the Imperium has not resolved the tension that animates its core. And that Loom has enjoyed decades in a moment, using 6's grace to propagate and train vast legions of Barent's soldiers and weapons, to capture and recondition generations of scions. So that's interesting because of a comment made in the campaign, and I believe it's Eris. I forgot exactly when she says it, but at some point she says this power should not be possible, and that it comes from outside our dimension. Um, and then, again, I forgot exactly when, but there's also talks about the fourth dimension. And when we talk about the fourth dimension, um, the fourth dimension is understood in two ways: as time, and then and space, and then they're combined to create space time. And you also see this in, how do I explain this? So I want to say, and I'm not certain here, but I want to say, based off of the research that I've done, is that somehow Six can manipulate space time. Like, and that's his power to some degree. I want to. I'm guessing here. And that's why Loom is able to enjoy decades in a moment, is because he can manipulate space time in a way, and I don't know, go back in time and maybe find scions or new soldiers or something like this. But for all that effort, the Imperium still lacks the summative soul of a nation. Torabottle is still beyond his efforts. So I'm guessing he's saying that even though he's doing all this and trying to reform this coalition, it's never going to be what Torabottle was, is what I'm assuming he's trying to say here. All he has built is a self-contradictory movement stitched together by grievances, garbed to look like an army. Again, a bunch of pieces joined together to look like something else, but it's not actually that something. Anyway, he's just talking about how the Barrent, I guess the Cabal in this sense, and the Scions are still enemies, and that their bonds have been broken for centuries, and they haven't shaken the pain. This is where this word comes up so much throughout this campaign. Pain is like, I know we're in like a Star Wars thing, and it makes sense to have like suffering and stuff, but it's interesting that pain is brought up a ton. These tidy categories both hate Keitel, but they hate her for different reasons. Those reasons aren't germane here. Germane meaning, let's see, relevant or closely related. And then he says, well, I can use this. The Barrent and the Scions have come to despise each other. The Barrent sees themselves as superior, but the Scions have never been free enough to consider themselves supreme. Loom will lose control at some point, despite the powers, again, interesting that he says powers, afforded to him by our patron Six. So Six has given Loom some kind of power, which I think we kind of see at the end of the campaign when his chest explodes and we see that red energy coming out. So anyway, and then Loom's nascent, I think that's how you pronounce that, nascent, which means coming into existence, beginning to display signs of future potential, the birth, beginning, like a civilization trend idea or action. So nascent state, his like new state, or maybe his becoming state or something like that, is fraying, not from the edges but from the center. So something is wrong with his core. The point of the stitch where the binding is meant to be strongest. Imperium will fail. I see this in my dreams. I can read what trembles the fibers of reality. But until the Imperium collapses, I will use it. I will use it to further my ultimate goals, which is to defeat the Vanguard, break their tyranny. I'll reach into the seams of his Imperium, tug the right threads, spiral them apart in a way that I can predict, stoke the fires to burn in a controlled manner, prescribe the burn, and then search the violence for promising candidates necessary to complete my work. Now notice this is not... I don't think this is I don't know if he's necessarily talking about the weapon that ends up killing a bunch of Guardians on Tharsis. But it's interesting that he already assumes, and I'm assuming this is pretty early on. I know it says entry 7. But he knows this is going to fail. Whatever it is, he knows his plan will fail. So he pivots almost. And then he's like, well, I'll let it burn. And then from the ashes, I will search for promising candidates to complete my work. And then next he says, the scions will be my first attempt. The fruit plucked from division's harvest. I don't know what he means by that, but exactly yet. And then he goes to talk about Loom's project will fail. So he's up here not talking about the weapon. I'm assuming the weapon that kills everybody on Tharsis is Loom's project, but he will endure. This is the Cabal nature. I will be there with him. Let this effort of mine be a test of his mettle. A lesson in pain. Okay, another interesting. We got pain. We got lesson. This is very interesting. That will prompt him to grow stronger. So this failure will prompt him to grow stronger. Again, I know we're in a Sith, Star Wars kind of whatever, so this like makes sense, but it's also like there's something else going on here. I highly doubt this is just character stuff going on. Like it is, but there's something else working in the background too. This is the lesson that 6 confirmed for me. Growth and knowledge only come from pain. And we'll get to this in a moment, but this is also very interesting. That growth and knowledge only come from pain. This is starting to sound a little like that there's this power that only comes from accepting something within the mind. Is how I would put it. Ancient cultures practice scarification. I do the same. And then he's like, are you listening to me, 6? So a few things there that we can kind of, pick up on. And whatever is that Beal has other plans. He's got other schemes working in the background. And for some reason he needs scions, and that he's kind of obsessed with this idea that you can grow and gain knowledge from pain, which is also very Sith-based. So it lines up. Next, entry 8, which is also pretty cool. It says crop rendering. And then we get a bunch of like test feeds here. And the final one ending with catchment and open up Janus conduit. And then catchment. And then a feed dies. So, a couple things. Janus, I looked it up. I would assume that Bungie doesn't just write this stuff for shits and giggles. And so Janus is primarily the ancient Roman god of beginnings, transitions, doorways, and time, famously depicted with 2 faces looking in opposite directions, symbolizing past and future. And then also Satellite of Saturn, I thought was pretty interesting. I don't really know if that has a correlation to anything, but it's interesting that when we're talking about gods and stuff, beginnings and endings, faces looking in opposite directions, symbolizing past and future, past and future. And then Drifter through 6, or other way around, 6 showed Drifter a vision of the future. So somehow, and again, this is me kind of theorizing here, I think 6 has control over the space-time fabric or continuum or something like that. Because whatever this power is, it comes from outside our dimension. And I would assume it is this fourth dimension. And now if we read further, 45 seconds is the longest any of your scions have been able to sustain a connection to me before burning out. That's barely enough time for me to even begin to construct a shared understanding. Without additional minds, again, keyword minds here. Yes. In Destiny 2, the darkness is strongly tied to the mind and consciousness. Stasis described as the element of will and control. It involves imposing order and a rigid final shape into existence. It requires inner discipline and control of one's emotions to wield effectively. Strand, this power is explicitly referred to as a psychic energy that allows users to manipulate the underlying threads of reality through a go-with-the-flow mindset and understanding of connections between all things. Deep sight, an ability that allows a user to experience memories associated with an object's past, directly linking darkness to remembrance and consciousness. Nightmares, these apparitions are created from traumatic memories and fears, a direct manifestation of the mind and emotion using darkness energy. And then the witness is a result of an ancient civilization binding their consciousness together into a single powerful being, using the darkness to pursue the final shape. So, just like stasis is the element of will and control, what if this new element, this power that's flowing through Beal, is the element of agony and pain or something like that? To link to my own, I cannot form the agony catchment required to shoulder this burden enough. If you're not stalling, you're incompetent. Okay, now that's interesting. So catchment. I thought this word stood out to me a little bit, so I looked it up. A catchment is the action of collecting water, especially the collection of rainfall over a natural drainage area. It makes me believe that they're trying to create a reservoir of agony to power what I'm assuming is the weapon, right? So they're using their minds to link to his own. And if we keep reading, where are you keeping your strongest scions? No mission you undertake is more important than this. I am the conduit through which our shared patron distributes his power. This patron, being 6, distributes his power through Beal into this agony catchment. And then he says, power that flows to you through Loom by me. This is a little interesting. So it flows. So if I'm saying this to someone, it flows to you through Loom by me. So it comes through me because I am the conduit, goes to Loom, and then to you. Send me your best to share this burden, or I'll have Loom shut down your totality division, and I will use you as my primary catchment. So reservoir. I think this is almost like a reservoir type of thing. And the reason this is interesting is because then this means that he cannot form the agony reservoir required to shoulder this burden. I don't know what the burden is. And that it's a very important mission that we get this done. And that he needs to listen because he is the conduit, the weapon, which our shared patron distributes his power. That power maybe being the control of space-time itself. And yeah, his tests aren't working, and he's not able to sustain this connection long enough in order to harness this burden or, take on this role as whatever 6 is trying to make him as. And then direct me. So this is closer to the end, or entry number 9 here. It's not working. None of it's working. I can't get them to listen. Loom scions are too stuck in their dreams and their delusionary concept of the individual, the self, themselves. Arrogant, selfish. There is a greater movement at work. They're too myopic, I think. I don't know. But basically it means nearsighted. To understand the beauty of being part of some collective whole. They are improper tools. So basically, they're not the right candidates for the job. For the work I intend to put them to. And then he says, it seems I will not be able to dismantle the Vanguard with them. Okay, so he's basically, this confirms that Scion's not it, right? Now, this is where it also gets interesting. I need you to help me, 6. So now we're speaking to 6. I need you to speak to me, speak through me, so that they can see. I would cut off their eyelids and force them to see, but only if you guided my hand. And then he says, speak. I need you to speak. Let me be your conduit. So he's still technically the conduit. Maybe they're having like a rough patch with 6 or something like that. And then, this is also an interesting paragraph. Is this what Guardians feel with the Traveler so still? So basically he's saying, is this what the Guardians felt when the Traveler wouldn't speak to them? When, I guess Safala was questioning the Traveler and all that jazz. Maybe this is the same pain or something that they felt. I don't know. Anyway, do they feel a similar agony when the light animates them? I have never seen a Guardian in pain. Could it be that the light protects them from that pain, or does it withhold its greater power and deny them fuller strength? This part is also really interesting because he's saying basically, does the light protect us from pain, or does it deny us pain, and in doing so does the Traveler or the light withhold a greater power from Guardians because they cannot feel pain and harness that energy from pain to then turn into what I suspect will be the next subclass. There's an old word for Guardians who turn from the path of light. I've seen it in my texts on darkness, dredgen. A word given to the exiled by the preening arrogance that expelled them. Preening means like birds do it. It's like when you pluck your feathers, you want to make yourself look good. So he's calling basically the Vanguard just arrogant and like they're all out to make themselves look good. That expelled them. I think I should use this word. I should give it a new meaning. Now, this is another interesting line because what if he gives it a new meaning by giving these Guardians, right? Because we know the Scions aren't good enough to do this shit, to create the agony catchment or reservoir and harness the power that 6 is giving Loom and Beal. But what if some Dark Guardians would be up for the challenge? What if these Dark Guardians were able to harness pain, the emotional whatever state of pain, and turn it into something new? And if we look at Janus 2, this will be interesting because beginnings, transitions, doorways, and time. Not time, just like beginnings and transitions. So what if this is going to be a huge transitional point in Destiny's story where we actually see Dark Guardians come into the fold, using a new power given to them by 6, sourced from pain and agony. Interesting. But again, that's just kind of theorizing. And then he says, I can't stop trembling, but only the parts of me that have not yet been changed. So something's happening to Beal. He's turning into something else. He was human, now he's something else. Transformational moment of pain. Those that have been made in the shape of his vision are all the better at channeling his power. Again, channeling his power. Those have been made in the shape of his vision are all the better at channeling his power. Channeling 6's power. I don't know how. I don't know where. I don't know how it's going to go down. Something is happening here. The agony shaped me from meat to beauty. So again, we're talking Beal here. So he went from ordinary to extraordinary. I'm guessing what he's saying. And I want to say this is after the final cutscene. But I don't know. Beal is doing something. And in one of the Lawless Frontiers, Loom chimes in and he's like, hey, I haven't heard from you, Beal. And Bale's like, I've been busy with whatever. Maybe he's busy doing this. How cool would it be to have a Sith army, quote unquote Sith? But in Destiny they'd be the Dredgen army, and it's the Guardian and Anor, the Jedi, versus Beal and his Dredgen, the Sith. Anyway, this is the thing Loom's scions are afraid of. The pain, only pain, that's so small. A rat fears pain, a frog, creatures, beasts. These scions claim to be the mightiest beings in soul. We all know that not to be true. Guardians are the mightiest beings in soul. But but they wither when I share a moment of my agonies with them. Pathetic. They refuse to accept that pain is a pathway into meaning. So something about pain is the pathway or doorway into a new beginning or a new thing. Not merely the spasmodic firing of anguished nerves. So the random firing of anguished nerves. So he's saying that this pain is not just random firing of anguished nerves, that this is something new and that we must learn to harness it and understand it. And then he goes on to say, of course transcendence would be excruciating. What did they expect? To mediate themselves into absolute power? To relax into freedom? And this would explain why he's always in pain in the campaign and why he's so complaining about being in pain all the time is because he's transcending into something else, something new, something different. Please, 6, direct my hands, direct my feet, direct my search to direct my search to those who would be more willing to become my Dredgens. Find me those who can endure these agonies necessary to become open to your power. Direct my search. Who is more willing to become a Dredgen than some Guardians? Who can endure these agonies in order to open up to new powers? Guardians. We've done it time and time again. We've done it with Stasis. We've done it with Strand. And now we're doing it with this new pain-based agony subclass at some point. And then he goes on to say, I'm your vessel, but the more I channel your strength without you, the more my own wanes. Again, and maybe this is saying the more he tries to channel his strength alone, the more he wanes. His own strength wanes. So he needs to find people to share his burden with, to teach his lessons to. He's basically a Sith with no apprentice. The more he tries to channel his strength alone, the more he wanes. His own strength wanes. So he needs to find people to share his burden with, to teach his lessons to. He's basically a Sith with no apprentice. And then he goes, there's a level of suffering that I'm quite used to, and then there's working with the bureaucracy. This is Kydal. So this is before I'm guessing entry 1 would probably be the first entry, right? So this is probably before. This is before he became Dredge and Beal, and he was working at Tex Mechanica, and he hates bureaucracy, and he hates people who make the rules. Um, and he says that basically, yes, soldiers are great and they are amazing, and they brought the stars to the heal to heal, but it's only because of a force that kept them fed, fueled, and stocked. So the Guardians are great and awesome and whatnot, but I think he's saying that the Guardians are only so awesome because of the people who keep things going in the city, in the last city, and that the bureaucrats are the most entitled and haughtiest, and they stand in the way of progress. Um, and that when he wants to give something to somebody, or when he wants to give soldiers what they ask for, a quartermaster comes over to tell him that he can't because it's too expensive. And then he says they have small minds who don't dream, but think of cost, capital, and limits. Discard your limits. Um, Goes into some backstory about his father and how his father's a sentimental dope. Bro, how crazy would it be if this was like if Beal was somebody that we knew at the tower, like it was their kid or something like that. And then until I run Tex Mechanica, I will push the firm into the future despite his dad. I will follow the voices of soldiers and those who dare. That is how one keeps reverence for what came before, by responding to the will of the masses. So the will of the masses, the people of the last city, who compose the very institutions these moribund leaders claim to represent. So there's a disconnection between the people of the last city and the Guardians and the Vanguard. Right, and that's what it says. It kind of explains. This is a long one, but let me see if there's anything else in here. Talks about how he met Loom, and he had this grandiose ideal of what the Cabal should look like and what they were like before Keitel or before Callus. And that we need dreamers like Loom, and that this is what I ask of my designers and engineers. Imagine a weapon to be carried into the breach and beyond. Beyond maybe being into another dimension. A tool as mighty as the ones who wield it. Make Loom a weapon that he is proud to carry, and let me be the vessel through which it is delivered. So make Loom a weapon he is proud to carry, and make me the vessel through which it is delivered. And maybe Six saw this, and this is why Six chose Beal. We give power a body, milling it from inert metal into an implement that shakes the columns of reality itself. Another interesting choice of words. The bark of our beast makes kings and tyrants just as mortal as the lowest of us. So, the bark of our beasts, basically, we make kings and tyrants just as mortal as the lowest of us. So, interestingly enough, this could be taken as we make the Guardians just as mortal as everybody else, using these new weapons that we're going to make, or that we want to make. I want Tex Mechanica to be stamped on every side of the Liberator's gun. I want us to be the engine of history. So we begin with Loom. So they made something for Loom that harnesses Six's power in some sort of way. I don't know how. I don't know. And then this is also really interesting because this gives us more this next one, entry 2. This gives us backstory into why Beal hates the Vanguard, the Guardians, and the Light. And basically what happened is his mom died, and he had pleasant memories, and his father was not a great person, or just wasn't around that great, and so her voice would silence him and protect him until he saw her, and these memories comforted him. And then one day he was in the market, the Bonnet Plaza in the West District, and he was getting lunch, and he sees his mom. And entered, or wait, I don't even know how to say this, or what this is. Interrd, this placed. Okay, so he placed his mother's, hold on, sorry. Okay, so he buried his mom. She was ash, but in this moment, he saw his mom again, moving through the crowd with her ghost. And she had been dead for 3 years, and somehow the light had found her under all this, whatever. And then there's 2 others with her. She glowed, flushed with heat, as if the fire that cremated her now animated her from within. I cried out in horror, unable to stop myself. It made sense. Of course, the traveler would grant my beloved mother the gift every child in the last city dreams of, every dying elder longs for, as they move away from the main of life, eternal life without fear. But when I embraced her, crying her name at the center of a cheering crowd, what did my mother do? She shoved me away. I felt the searing push of solar energy in her strength, a sizzling reminder on my chest as I stumbled back and fell. Not a twinkle of recognition in her eyes, just discomfort. The look one gives a clamoring beggar that gets too close. Cold. She was cold. She was hideous, a doppelganger, a homunculus. Her chirping idiot of a ghost commanded me to clear the way, and off they went. Bystanders helped me to my feet. Strangers, kinder than my own mother. So this is why Beal hates the light and views guardians as objects and hollow shells, is because when we're resurrected, we forget everything that came before. And maybe that is to protect us from falling prey to a darker force. Maybe that's why the traveler does that. Maybe there is a reason that our memories are not granted to us on our second life. And then he goes on to say, is this the truth of the light? Is this what it does? Animate the dead and possesses them with ghosts? Puppeteers who keep them hooked to life like a fish on a lure? To prey on desperation and transfix the city in this poison dream? What miracle makes a mother spit on her child? My memories of her are now curses. Every single one a searing ember. And then for some reason it's glitched, and the other ones are like I'm not able to read right now. I don't know why, but there is another interesting one. Entry 6. I can kill ghosts faster than new guardians can be raised. There's a world beyond this one. The walls that keep us in are feeble. So he's trying to break the walls that keep us contained in this world. And he's found a way, one, he can kill ghosts, whatever. He's found a way to do so. But yeah, basically. Oh, and sorry, I forgot to mention this earlier. That's been my little rant about all this. I know it was a lot, and if you made it to the end of the video, I really appreciate you making it this far. I will try to edit this down as much as I possibly can, but I do think there's like a lot of good information in here, and if you read through this and then go play the campaign again, I think you're gonna see some you're gonna see it a little bit differently as far as like what's coming in the future. And there's a lot here. There's a lot of stuff going on in the background in this time period that I don't think we get to see in the campaign. I really wish I could read these other 4 entries, and I don't know why they're bugged for me, but hopefully we'll get to reading those at a certain date, and when I can, I will get back to y'all with more information on it, and we'll just see what happens in the dungeon, what new story elements are given to us, and, you know, I kind of hope that, you know, they are going to bring us some kind of new subclass with this little story beat that they're telling us, but who's to know? Yeah. Other than that, have a great day. And then if you like the video, give it a like. And if you like my content or anything like that, just feel free to hit that subscribe button. I try to post at least 4 times a week, but these videos sometimes take a little longer to make and, you know, edit and stuff like that. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see y'all in the next one.